Szanowni Państwo, bardzo mi miło. Jesteśmy na festiwalu Człowiek w zagrożeniu i mam ogromną przyjemność rozmawiać o filmie pod tytułem Lepiej milczeć, czyli Safer in Silence z Corinne Chateau. Hello, Corinne.
Hello.
It's really nice to meet you. I guess you are in the United States, yes?
Yes, I'm in New York.
New York, great. How is New York now?
New York, it's starting to get cold. It's been quite beautiful with the fall, the leaves turning, but now we had a very, very heavy rain yesterday, huge, unexpected thunderstorm. And so now the weather's changing.
Nice, very nice. Let me start about your documentary with the composition of your documentary, Safer in Silence. Could you just tell us a little bit, maybe elaborate on that? This is some kind of family footage mixed up with some, I could say, diary footage, maybe. When did you realize that this is becoming the documentary in the making, the movie in the making? When did you realize that?
Yeah, so you're completely right. A lot of it is family footage in the making. Actually, I had no idea of making a documentary. That was not at all my thought. I was trying to understand things about my family for myself, because being an only child, being the first one born in America, not having many relatives around, hardly any. I wasn't getting that much information. So when I would find something out, I had this need to document it. I mean, whether it was a photograph or a diary, later it was video, but it was for myself, so that I had almost like a kind of proof. This is real. But it wasn't really until 2013 that I thought, I have a lot of interesting material here. And now at this point, I had found out about all these relatives that I had no idea about. I found out about
your grandpa.
Excuse me?
For example, your grandpa. Your grandmother.
Well,
yes.
My grandmother, I met when I was 16. That was a big surprise, because I didn't know I had this Polish grandmother. And so she appeared on the scene one day, and coming from Brazil. And so I met this wonderful woman, but I didn't know about anybody else, because my grandmother told me who were not killed by the Germans were killed by the Russians. So there was no family from that. I mean, I had a Polish grandfather who I met a few times, but he died when I was very little. And so, but then when I did learn, this was in 1997 when I first received a call from a man who asked if I was related to Clement Skalski, and I said that was my grandfather, and he said, well, I think maybe we might be related. And first of all, I didn't believe it, but then as I was hearing more and meeting other people, and I knew that it was true, and I was discovering relatives, as I said, that I didn't know existed. And then I was learning about these ancestors, important people from the past in Poland who had been, doctors, scientists, writers, philanthropists. And so it was really in 2013, this was already, I mean, I'm compressing a lot here, but this was, I had learned quite a bit, and I had been now to Poland several times, and I thought, I have all this footage. It's not professional footage, but it's authentic footage. It was things taken right in the moment, nothing planned, no cameras, no special sound. I mean, no, and yes, of course, a camera, but no, I meant lights, no special lighting, no sound, no. It was just what I took in the moment and continued to be taking as I was meeting people, discovering things, hearing about things. So, and it was also, I have to say, very much through the encouragement of a cousin who I discovered in Lodz, Polish cousin living in Lodz, Krzysztof Prohaska, who also was very interested in trying to pull together the pieces of this story of our family, because there were many things that as I discovered as I was meeting people, no one knew about the past. So he was trying to do it from his end. And then when he knew about what I was doing, he was encouraging me to do something. And at first I thought, oh, maybe a book, but I didn't know, you know, I knew I wasn't so interested in doing an academic kind of thing. It was a personal story. It would have to be not academic. And so then the footage, then I thought of the footage, not realizing how difficult it was going to be to actually make a documentary, because it's one thing to have footage, it's another thing to make a story.
So what was the most challenging for you, both personally and as a movie maker, as a producer, creator of the movie?
Well, personally, I guess it was because, you know, as I was making the film, I was re-experiencing a lot of things that had happened to me in my life. I mean, in the sense of unexpected surprises, shocks. So there was this feeling that I could never quite hold on to anything. I mean, I think I was trying to repair something from the past. I was trying to put pieces together. I was trying to heal something. And, but as I was trying to assemble the pieces and make this film, there were new surprises that then that changed the story, or made me feel that I better find out more about that, because how can I say this if I don't know that? And so this feeling of uncertainty created a lot of anxiety for me, because I really was searching for the truth. And that's what I wanted to express. But the truth sometimes can be elusive. And the truth, you know, that can be found maybe in documents and papers and all this is not necessarily psychological truth. And so that was on a personal level. On the level of making the film, well, first of all, you know, a film, it can get very expensive to make a film, especially when you're paying for everything yourself. And I started in the States, in America, and I did an assembly with one editor, but I knew, you know, it wasn't there yet. It was far from there. And also the money was going fast. And I thought, I really have to go to Poland, not only because it was too expensive for me in the States, but also because I felt I needed someone Polish to understand the complexity of this past, of this story, of World War II, of what all the things that have happened in Poland, of this. I needed that sensibility. So I went searching, and I mean, by some miracle, I was connected with Milena Fiedler.
I'm going to ask you about that, about Milena Fiedler, because she is a very special person in Łódź. She's the head of the National Film School now in Łódź.
Yes, yes. So absolutely. I mean, when I first met her, it was through a phone call. I didn't know who she was. All I knew is that when and she wasn't saying that she was doing my film. She was just giving me feedback from what she saw when she watched my film. But I knew she was the person who had to do the film. I mean, I knew she was the right person. And, you know, I mean, finding the right editor is like finding the right actor for a film. I mean, there can be a lot of good actors, but you know, there's this one actor you have to make the film. And I just felt that
So
Millennia
is it
was
safe to say that finding Millennia was some kind of essential to the movie, to the documentary?
absolutely. I mean, because she understood it, as she understood what I was trying to say. I felt we were on the same wavelength. I felt I didn't. She just understood so much, and every time, and when we would meet and discuss, and she ended up watching all the footage with me, which an editor in America, I mean, it would be very hard to get them to watch all the footage because it would be, you know, so expensive. So, but she did, and we talked a lot, and the story was evolving. It, you know, it was evolving as we were doing it. So it did. The editing process took several years. For one thing, Millennia was busy with feature films. I mean, this was before she was the head of the school, but also the story was evolving. It was changing. And it was hard to know, well, where is the story and what is the end? And so, but yes, Millennia was absolutely essential. And I am so grateful that she accepted to do it.
It was really great for me to watch in this documentary some kind of two perspective of your mother, which was more about safer in silence and let's not talk about it, this must stay in the past, and the perspective of your grandmother, who was more talkative about her past. When you were doing this movie, did you think about these two perspectives, these two, my mother versus my grandmother?
Well, yes, because they were completely opposite, opposing perspectives. I mean, my grandmother, as I said, you know, I only met her when I was 16, and I didn't know I had this grandmother. But my grandmother had known a Poland, a very good Poland, a Poland that she loved, a Poland that she was proud of her family. She wanted to pass this on to me. I mean, she told me, you know, about this intellectual aristocracy. And she told me, I mean, she wanted to pass this on to me. My mother was about to be 17 when World War II started. Her whole life was changed, her whole teenage, can you imagine? I mean, at 17, you know, when you have your life in front of you and then suddenly your education is ripped from you, your friends, your language, you have to move from country to country, you don't know where you're going to end up. And also you're hiding something, you're hiding a big secret. You're hiding this Jewish past. And every day could be your last. Now, this was the big secret for me. My mother, of course, never ever told me about anything Jewish. I had no idea about any Jewish roots, nothing, until I was really, you know, into my 30s. Okay, and even my grandmother didn't tell me. She told me about this wonderful Polish family. And she gave me all these Polish names and everything. And it was only the last time I happened to see her, she was already 94. This was in Rio in Brazil. And somehow it spilled out of her. I don't know if she was really intending, well, unconsciously, I think she was intending to tell me about that we come from a Jewish family originally, and my grandfather too. And I said to her, you know, my mother doesn't know anything about this. And my grandmother said, she knows very well, but don't talk about it. She said, don't be diplomatic, don't talk about it. And when my grandmother died and I talked about the Jewish ancestors, my mother denied it. And so it created this conflict in me. I mean, I grew up with a lot of this conflict because I felt that secrets were being kept from me, and I felt I had to be careful what I asked, what I didn't ask. And so going back to grandmother versus mother, I understand why my mother was so afraid to reveal, because it was life and death. And I think that fear, you know, that fear of being found out of who you really are was so deep in her body that it was like just a reaction, you know. It was like a threat for me to ask her anything about this. Whereas for my grandmother, she had grown up in Poland in a different time, and she left Poland. She was 40, and or about around that age, and so her whole relationship to Poland and to the family and even to the Jewish, though she knew that, of course, their survival depended on keeping this secret, you know, during the war. But my grandmother wanted to pass on the story, and my mother thought it wasn't necessary because the story is too terrible to tell.
Did you have any moments of a doubt while making this documentary? Any moments of reflection, I'm not doing it, it must stop, for example?
Oh, yes.
In the whole process of...
Oh, yes. No, many times.
Really?
I questioned myself because...
Could you tell us more about it? Or
yeah.
It's too personal, maybe.
Right. No. I'm just trying to think. I really would not have made this documentary had my mother been alive. It was really her death in 2009 that gave me the permission, really, and the need to do something. I didn't know what. This was 2009. It took me till 2013 to start to think about the documentary. But I was left with so many questions, so many things unresolved, that I felt I needed to somehow piece together this story, piece together for myself, because I felt, you know, I felt broken in pieces. I felt a lot was broken, and I was trying to somehow, as I said, heal it, somehow put it together. But on the other hand, was it right for me to do this? Because my mother didn't want me to know this. My mother would certainly would not encourage me to make a documentary. Is it right to go digging into people's past, expose a lot when they didn't want to do it? So yes, so I was conflicted about that, but in the end, I felt that hiding a lot was not the best strategy. Keeping secrets, even though I can understand, but I don't think it's the best strategy, because even though I didn't know as a child or as a teenager growing up, I didn't know what the secrets were, but I knew something was off. My mother was distant. I knew I had to be careful what I said, what I didn't say. I didn't feel at ease around my own mother. You know, I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, but I think it very much affected me. I ended up going into acting. Now, acting is something, you know, where you want to, I went into acting, I think, not only to play characters, but also to express parts of myself that I didn't have the permission to in life. On the other hand, there was something in me that had a censor, that had a fear of being exposed, some shame, but I didn't know what it was. I had no idea, but it would surface in certain situations where I felt somehow threatened. And suddenly this terror would come up in me, which was not related to the reality. You know, it was too much life and death for me. So in the end, I did feel that it's more important to speak the truth, to own the past, to know about history. It's very dangerous not to know about history. It's very dangerous to change history. I mean, we have to know about it. So, you know, it was weighing the things. And in the end, I felt, and also because I had someone as good as Millennia to help me, you know, who I knew would not, I knew I would not be embarrassed by what I had done. So, yes, so I made the choice.
I was wondering, because you said about the history, the importance of knowing the history, and we are now in the middle of this refugee crisis, especially here in Poland, on the Belarus border. So I was wondering, did this documentary can be a way to make people be more aware of other people refugee situation and of the refugee situation in general? Can we watch it that way? Can we understand it that way? For example, what would you like to say through this movie maybe to the people in Poland during this particular time?
Well, yes, I mean, you know, just taking my family, my family survived because another country ended up taking them in. I mean, actually, the United States refused a lot of Jewish people, you know, that it was a big issue. And we're
It was
still
very difficult for your mother also. It was really difficult to get there for your mother also.
It was very difficult to get into the United States. It was very difficult. It was very difficult for my whole family. But can you imagine? I mean, you're ripped from your own country because your country, you might be killed in your own country. Everything is taken from you. Your everything in your family. You've seen murder. You've seen your home destroyed. And then you're trying to survive. That's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to survive. You're trying to survive, and you're trying to get to some place where maybe you can survive without this fear of being shot, and then people don't want you, and then people don't want you, and how are you going to live? How are you going to take care of your child? How are you going to educate the child? I mean, we just cannot imagine what it's like for immigrants. I mean, it's really terrible. And you know, and again, you know, going back to my situation, I mean, I was very fortunate. I was born in the United States, and I did not go through war, and but I really believe, especially now that I've done the film, that I carried some kind of generational trauma. That this fear, you know, this fear that it's not okay to be who you are, you know, that if you do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, appear with the wrong people, somehow your existence is at risk. And so you know, I was very lucky, but I can identify with these people who who don't feel quite safe to be who they are. And so I know it's a terrible, it's so difficult now in so many parts of the world and so many places where, and with climate change, it's going to get worse, you know, with people having to escape from their country. So we have to realize we're one world. And basically, I mean, to absorb a lot of people from outside is very difficult, but just on a humanitarian level, you know, when people are suffering, when they're freezing cold, when they're starving, when they, just as one human being to another, you know, imagine being in their shoes.
Well, this screening for me, when I was watching this movie, was more about the humanity and this humanitarian way of treating people than the history documentary about some kind of family. Because what I experience, what we are actually experience now in Poland and with this situation is terrible. So I was watching this movie with this kind of notion.
Well, I'm glad. You know, I mean, that's the thing. People, an audience, someone your age, someone with what's going on with you, around you in Poland now, will see the film from your perspective. Someone older who may have known life in Poland, you know, close to the war, we'll see it in a different way. And I'm glad. And that's why I'm so grateful to have this privilege to come to Lodz, because to be able to show the film and then have an exchange, a conversation with a live audience, because we need to talk to each other. We need to share experiences. We need to be able to dialogue and express feelings and ideas without feeling a threat. So, you know, and film can do that, but we also need to have the discussion afterwards.
Yeah, I feel very honored to have you here, and I would really like to thank you for your time and for this talk, and hope to see you in Łódź, probably.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, and see you soon. Goodbye, and good night for me, and goodbye.
Dziękuję bardzo. Do widzenia.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.